The discovery was unprecedented, an abandoned and unmarked cemetery where 95 individuals were laid to rest more than 100 years ago and then forgotten from history. But now, Fort Bend ISD is moving forward to honor the Sugar Land 95 and ensure their role in history is never again forgotten. This video provides background on the journey to date and the next steps as FBISD prepares to rebury the Sugar Land 95 in their final resting place. We're breaking it up into 5 sections, beginning with the purchase of the land and the construction.
Fort Bend ISD purchased the land in 2011, and in November of 2014, Fort Bend ISD voters approved a $484 million bond program that included funding for the construction of the James Reese Career and Technical Center. The district began construction of the center in October of 2017.
Just as construction started, Fort Bend ISD received a call from the Texas Historical Commission to share a concern long held by a community member, Mr. Reginald Moore. Mr. Moore warned that prisoner grave sites might exist on the property. As a former prison guard in the area, Moore was very knowledgeable about the state's convict leasing program that existed after the abolishment of slavery. This program provided prison labor for local plantations. In this case, prisoners harvested sugarcane. At the recommendation of the State Historical Commission, the district hired an archaeological firm, Goshawk Environmental Consulting, to be on site as construction began, just in case a grave was discovered. Goshawk archaeologists were monitoring on site beginning in October 2017. More than 4 months passed without any sign of a grave. Then, on February 18, 2018, 3 bone fragments were discovered by a backhoe operator. Test results confirmed that the bones were human bones.
At first, we thought we had a single grave or a small family cemetery. As we continued the search, we found more graves and we realized we were identifying the boundaries of a large formal cemetery. There were no markers, no headstones, nothing that would indicate the presence of a cemetery on the James Reese campus.
The district halted all construction in the area immediately upon the discovery of the first remains, and then formally notified the contractor to stop all work on the east area of the building on April 5, 2018.
As designed, there was a wing of the building, Section E, that was to be constructed in that area. We stopped construction in the area and continued working on other areas of the building. In February 2019, the district decided to revise the original design to eliminate Section E. We also had to modify the site plan to reroute the water line, fire line, and bus drop-offs to avoid the area.
The James Reese Career and Technical Center opened in August of 2019 without Section E as originally designed. Earlier, you heard from Rain Clark, who oversaw the teams of archaeologists that carefully excavated the graves and exhumed the remains. His team helped curate teeth and bone samples for isotope analysis and DNA sequencing. From March 2018 to June 2018, working in collaboration with and under the direction of the Texas Historical Commission, his team established the cemetery boundaries.
To identify the location of graves, we searched within a 50-foot radius of each identified grave shaft. We extended the investigation 50 feet beyond the cemetery boundary and searched all areas within the investigation boundary, thus establishing the west, north, and east cemetery boundaries. We suspected that the original stream course of Bullhead Bayou formed a natural southern boundary for the cemetery. We excavated across Bullhead Bayou to identify the old infilled stream bed and continued on to the southern terrace. We continued our investigation to be certain no graves had been placed on the south terrace of Bullhead Bayou.
Once the cemetery boundaries were established, the district sought and received a court's permission to exhume the remains for further investigation and analysis.
During exhumation of the remains, we learned much more about these individuals. All organic material had long deteriorated, but bone material was well preserved. We took into consideration the historical use of the land, the age of the burials based on funerary hardware, and the relative lack of young children and women buried at the cemetery. Our preliminary analysis suggested that the cemetery was associated with a convict labor camp that was operated in the vicinity after the abolition of slavery.
This exhumation of the skeletal remains took place over the summer of 2018. The process was meticulous. Teams of archaeologists carefully brushed dirt away from the remains until they could be fully documented and safely removed from the ground. Each of the remains was analyzed by the project bioarchaeologist Katrina Banks Whitley to learn about the conditions these men endured during their incarceration at the labor camp. In some cases, cause of death could be determined. The archaeological team also collected bone and tooth samples for future isotope analysis and DNA sequencing. Extracting genetic material from tooth and bone requires invasive analysis, something the district was not authorized to do. When the district asked the Texas Historical Commission for authorization, the commission was not sure it had the legal authority to grant authorization. The commission requested an opinion from the state's attorney general as to whether it could grant authorization to the district to perform the invasive analysis. The attorney general issued his opinion in June of 2019, confirming the Texas Historical Commission had the authority to authorize the district to extract the genetic material for isotope analysis and DNA sequencing. The genetic material is now in the possession of the Texas Archaeological Research Laboratory at the University of Texas at Austin. The Historical Commission will oversee future testing. The discovery of an abandoned cemetery requires the landowner to take certain legal actions according to statute. Shortly after verifying the remains were human, the district filed its required notice with the county clerk, recorded on April 2nd. Then, in June, after the archaeologists confirmed the cemetery's perimeter, Fort Bend ISD filed a motion to exhume the remains. The district court granted the permission.
And as the exhumation was underway, the district began discussions with the city of Sugar Land regarding the future reinterment of the remains at the nearby Old Imperial Prison Farm Cemetery, which is a historically associated cemetery, and which the Texas Historical Commission agreed was an appropriate place for reburial. The district was grateful for the city's willingness to support our efforts to reinter the remains nearby.
The district finalized the agreement with the city in October of 2018, and then in November 2018 went back to the district court petitioning to reinter the remains in the Old Imperial Prison Farm Cemetery and to remove the cemetery designation so that the district could finish construction of the Career and Technical Center as originally designed.
When the court did not grant the petition to remove the cemetery designation, a period of uncertainty followed. The judge appointed a master in chancery, a decision the district challenged at the appellate court. The appeals court granted a stay, but with these legal matters outstanding, all plans to rebury the Sugar Land 95 came to a halt. There was no clear path forward until the county became involved.
In early 2019, Fort Bend County commissioners stepped forward to explore possibilities of the county taking over the cemetery from the district. But the county determined that the law did not grant it the authority to own or operate the cemetery. With the support of local lawmakers, a bill was passed that would allow the county to own and operate the cemetery.
During the legislative session, the district's negotiations with the county continued regarding conveyance of the land for Memorial Park, which the county had authority to operate. But then, after the legislation passed that allowed the county to own and operate the cemetery, negotiations stalled over the question of whether court approval was needed to rebury the remains where they were found. The district's position was that since we were no longer seeking the court's permission to remove the remains or the cemetery designation, it was unnecessary. We dismissed the petition, believing it was more respectful to the Sugar Land 95 to go forward with reinterment even before the conveyance of land. Negotiations have resumed regarding the donation of land for memorialization.
It had been more than a year and a half since the remains were discovered, and the Sugar Land 95 are no closer to their final resting place. We are dedicated to moving forward with a reburial that is respectful and dignified. It is our intent that they are each buried where they were found, and that it is done in a way that we know where each individual is, should DNA ever connect them to descendants.
Throughout this journey, Fort Bend ISD has engaged in many conversations with community members. From the start, there was Mr. Reginald Moore, who first contacted the Texas Historical Commission and Fort Bend ISD in October of 2017 as construction was beginning.
Reggie Moore's determination and perseverance has been unwavering, and his voice prophetic. He's always wanted to make sure that the district, that the community is aware of the contributions of the Sugar Land 95, that they are honored, treated with dignity and respect, and that their role in history is recognized. We share that desire.
Students had also visited the site to get an up-close look at the archaeological process underway. In July 2018, the district also invited media to the site to learn more about the extensive exhumation process underway. The following month, the Texas Historical Commission, which we had relied upon for guidance, advised Fort Bend ISD to conduct additional community engagement around the possibility of DNA analysis. This led to the creation of the City of Sugar Land's task force in the fall of 2018, which unanimously agreed that DNA testing should occur.
With the task force agreeing on the importance of DNA, that it should happen, it was a key step forward. But then, the Commission indicated that they did not have the authority to grant this analysis, so that was another challenge. And really, this is all rooted in the fact that this has been unprecedented for all of us.
In early 2019, an advisory committee continued working on various topics, including how to educate students about the discovery.
This has been an emotional process for so many of us, because it brings us a part of history that is not pleasant. Convict leasing was a brutal system that was unjust and unfair, but it happened. Throughout this process, we've learned more about the atrocities of the system, giving us all pause. We've learned a lot, and we are moving forward to ensure that our students also learn about this piece of local history. This has not been an easy journey, but our commitment to doing what is right for these individuals and for our students has never changed.
The first students to learn about the Sugar Land 95 visited the site in July of 2018 as exhumation was underway. And in May of 2019, the Fort Bend ISD Board of Trustees adopted a local social studies standard and implemented this standard into the curriculum in August of 2019. This means that FBISD students at all levels will be learning about convict leasing as they learn to think like historians, learning about injustices of the past, and commemorating the lives of the Sugar Land 95.